everyone. I'm Karen Robles. I am the chair of the Fly Quiet Committee and the Village of Schaumburg's representative to the ONCC. I'm excited to see so many of you joining us this afternoon. The goal of today's meeting is to just start getting ONCC commission members who haven't had a chance to closely follow our Fly Quiet meetings and our progress, get all of you up to speed in advance of a full commission vote in the next couple of months. So this is kind of the first outreach opportunity. Certainly myself, Maura and Ryan are available if you have any questions about the process or next steps. So the format for today is going to be that Ryan's going to walk us through a brief presentation, just kind of getting you all up to speed on what we've been doing for the past couple of years. We'll go through the preferred alternative, and then it's just going to be an open discussion to answer any questions that you might have. I do want to note that we have a number of Fly Quiet committee members on with us today. We thought it might be helpful if some of your neighboring community representatives who've been participating in this process could answer questions, since they're the ones who've been kind of representing your area through our process. So with that, I will hand it over to Ryan. You're muted, Ryan.
Sorry about that. Good afternoon, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ryan Anderson with Landerman Brown. I am a consultant with the Chicago Department of Aviation and have been helping the Department of Aviation as well as the O'Hare Noise Compatibility Commission develop a new Fly Quiet program for O'Hare Airport. And we've been working on this for over 7 years now at this point, at least talking about it. So this committee has done quite a bit of work, and I'm going to briefly summarize where we are at with the committee and what the next steps are. Let me pull up more. It doesn't look like I'm able. Oh, there it is. Never mind. Okay, so the Fly Quiet Committee has, as I mentioned, been working for quite a number of years now on developing a new Fly Quiet program for O'Hare International Airport. As most of you know, the original Fly Quiet program was based on an airfield that existed prior to the O'Hare modernization program. So the program is based on an outdated airfield. Now that we have new runways and reoriented runways in place, we need a new Fly Quiet program to complement it. And so the Fly Quiet Committee spent quite a bit of time gathering information and developing the criteria and goals that they want to include to establish a new Fly Quiet program. We developed quite a number of alternatives. I believe there were about 12 in total different alternatives that were looked at that incorporated a lot of different components. But the major components that the committee has moved forward with their program is a runway rotation program that is able to rotate the airfield not only from week to week from east flow to west flow, but also rotating the airfield, north airfield and south airfield, to help provide a better balance of noise impacts in the surrounding communities around O'Hare. The alternatives were looked at pretty extensively, and all the components of it. The committee looked at each alternative and then decided to move forward with a couple of preferred alternatives to further review and revise, which they've done over the past year. And now we have a preferred alternative. Right now we're calling this alternative B3. This alternative has the major components that the majority of the committee has agreed that should be included in a new program. And so we are kind of putting our final touches on this new program. Actually, the committee is meeting tomorrow to kind of further discuss some of the topics that still need to be discussed as far as completing the overall package for the Fly Quiet program. But as Chairwoman Robles mentioned, we wanted to start outreaching to the Noise Commission members just to give them, start getting them some information on what this Fly Quiet program entails, and to help start, getting any questions answered or any clarifications that might be coming forward. So that being said, the committee, as I mentioned, the committee is planning to meet tomorrow morning and continue their discussion on the alternative and talking about some of the procedural, operational, and implementation topics that they want to include. But as we are right now, the committee is, like I said, putting those final touches on, and will be looking to incorporate those into a final recommendation in the near future. Once the committee has their final recommendation, they will advance that to the full ONCC commission for their review and approval. Once the ONCC reviews and approves, the CDA will take their recommendation and submit it to the FAA for their environmental review and approval. And then once we have approval, then we will look to implement the new program. The final submittal that the CDA will be making to the FAA will be a very comprehensive document, and will provide a complete narrative of the entire process that this committee has undergone to develop the new program, which includes all of the alternatives that the committee looked at, reviewed, revised, and subsequently either decided did not meet the criteria as well as some of the other alternatives. And so I wanted to make sure that everyone is clear that, and there isn't the impression that the package that will be submitted to the FAA will only include the preferred alternative. It will include the preferred alternative plus all the additional alternatives and variations that the committee has looked at over the years. When the FAA does their review, they are required to look at all the alternatives. However, of course, the preferred alternative is what the ONCC and the CDA is looking for approval for. So let me advance here. So just to give you kind of a background on some of the primary components that the committee looked at. As we were reviewing and revising alternatives, we broke it down into primary components, being the primary configurations, which are the identified primary arrival runway and departure runway to be used when we're in flight quiet. We looked at primary headings, those being the headings that the aircraft would use when they take off from that primary departure runway. We also looked at secondary configurations. Secondary configurations are those configurations to be used if the wind conditions are not conducive to use the primary configurations. So in our schedule, we're always going to have a primary configuration or a secondary, depending on the wind conditions. We also looked at long runways. And one of the things the Flight Quiet Committee did discover through some of the tests that we did several years ago on the interim flight quiet rotation programs, that some of our primary runways are a bit shorter than some of our others. And there are certain operations and types of aircraft that may need a long runway. So we looked at which runways would be identified as a long runway if needed to be used in certain configurations. We then spent a lot of time kind of reviewing and revisiting things, and now we have refined our alternative to a point where we're ready to move on to our procedural and implementation topics. So let me go through what the committee has advanced as their preferred alternative. Right now it's identified as alternative B3. It is a alternative that consists of a 12-week runway rotation that consists of 6 primary configurations. Each configuration is scheduled from week to week. So those 6 configurations are scheduled out and then repeated again over the 12-week period.
Did we lose Ryan?
Maybe.
Okay. So
We're checking on him right now.
okay. Well, I'll just keep going.
We'll do a wellness check on him real quick, but I'm assuming it's all right.
So as Ryan was mentioning, it's a 12-week rotation. So the whole program lasts for 12 weeks, and then it would start over from the beginning. A total of 6 different runway configurations are used over those 12 weeks. So was Ryan sharing the screen? Okay, I'll just keep going. And so those runway configurations are basically which runways are used during each week. The concept behind alternative B3 that the committee preferred was the split airfield approach. And so it alternates the use of the north airfield and then the south airfield. And the goal there was to try and provide some consecutive periods of relief. The sort of corresponding option to that would have been split airfield, where you were using runways both in the north and the south airfields. And the committee felt that by concentrating 1 week in the north airfield and 1 week in the south airfield, you could have those weeks of relief for the communities in whichever side of the airfield wasn't being used. The alternative also includes 2 departure headings for the east-west runways. And so what that means is that even though we only have 6 configurations and they'll be used twice throughout the schedule, by designating 2 departure headings, again, we're trying to spread the noise and minimize the impacts to the same people. So again, for those east-west runways, you'll see when Ryan comes back with his slides that there's a departure heading that will be used in the first 6 weeks, and then in the second 6 weeks, that departure heading changes to divert that air traffic over a different area. For the crosswind or diagonal runways, the committee had extensive discussion on that, and the decision was made that there were compatible land uses in those areas. And so they have, we've decided to move forward with a single departure heading, but with a turn in trying to follow like the highways and the forest preserve districts. Maura, what else was on Ryan's slide? Oh, is Ryan back?
Hi, so sorry about that.
I was able to keep rolling. But I started to forget what was at the bottom of the slide.
Yeah, the internet at my office just completely went down. So I'm using my phone here. Hopefully this will work.
Ryan, your slides were still up and Karen was just cruising along. You didn't miss a beat, but then your slides disappeared and she took a stumble, but then I was surprised she collected herself and was walking through it by memory. And I was actually really impressed. So
I know.
I was too. Very impressive.
I guess I don't need to be here then. I'll just watch you then.
I'm sure you do a better job explaining it. I just want to be respectful of, everyone's here and we'll keep moving.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Let me pull up the presentation again. Okay. So I don't know how far you got, Karen.
I got to the vector headings. Yep, that was how far I got.
Okay. So again, the major components of this alternative is that we're alternating west flow and east flow, as well as north airfield and south airfield. So we're scheduled to go north airfield, south airfield, crosswind. And also each configuration has a specific vector heading assigned for the departure runway. Each departure runway has, for our east-west parallel runways, has two vector headings, and our crosswind runways has a single vector heading with a turn. And so the idea is that each configuration, the next iteration of that runway configuration in the schedule will have a second departure heading. So again, the idea is to even more disperse the noise and redistribute during the overnight hours. So the schedule consists of 8 weeks of east flow, west flow, or east-west runway weeks, as well as 4 crosswind weeks. And let me go through the schedule a little bit cleaner on the schedule, so you get a better idea of how the alternative schedules that east-west flow, as well as north airfield, south airfield. So again, each week, there are 12 weeks in the rotation schedule. Each week has a primary configuration and a secondary configuration. There's an assigned arrival runway and departure runway for each week. And each week also has an assigned vector heading. So for instance, in week 1, we have arrivals on 27 center and departures on 27 left. The departures on 27 left will utilize a vector heading of 275 degrees. When they depart, so they'll turn to 275 and maintain that heading until a certain altitude before they're given different direction. And then we alternate to the south airfield, arrivals on 10 center, departures on 10 left, with a vector heading of 100 degrees. Week 3, we then alternate to our crosswind runways, departing 4 left and arriving 4 right. This configuration has a vector heading with a turn. And so the turns are established to better take advantage of the compatible land use along the 294 corridor. And then week 4, we have back to our east-west runways on south airfield, departing 28 right, arriving 28 center. And then 9 center back to the north airfield in week 5. 9 center arrivals and 9 right departures with a vector heading of 80 degrees. And then alternating back to our crosswind runways with 22 right arrivals and 22 left departures, and utilizing that vector heading with a turn. And then these runway configurations then repeat on the back half of the schedule. The only difference is now that we'll be using a secondary vector heading. So for instance, week 7, again, we're arriving on the north airfield at 27 center and departing 27 left. This time the vector heading is at 295 degrees. Week 8, we are departing 2 left and arriving 10 center with a vector heading of 115 degrees. Week 9, back to our crosswind runways, arriving 4 right, departing 4 left. Week 10, south airfield, departing 28 right, arriving 28 center with a 245 degree heading. Week 11, arriving 9 center, departing 9 right with a vector heading of 65 degrees. And week 12, arriving 22 right and departing 22 left. And now those 22 left departures are the vector heading with a turn. And here you'll see an overall picture of the schedule, departure runways, arrival runways, as well as those vector headings with a turn. Each week has an assigned vector heading, as well as a primary arrival runway and departure runway. And so these are the major components that is incorporated into Alternative B3. Alternative B3, again, the committee deliberated, did quite a bit of revisions to get it to a point where they feel this alternative meets the criteria that the committee established for a new program the best. And I've listed out the major components of the criteria here. Again, we're continuing with the committee to put some final touches on it, but the committee did vote for alternative B3 as the preferred alternative. It was, for all intents and purposes, almost unanimous. I believe the vote was 10-1. And so the committee strongly feels this is the preferred alternative for a new program to be developed once we have approval from the FAA. And so with that, I'll open it up to any comments or questions from the committee members.
Yes, so feel free to unmute yourself, write in the chat if that's preferred, but happy to answer any questions that anyone has about the preferred alternative. As Ryan mentioned, we're meeting tomorrow to start talking about procedural items. We'll be updating everyone as we go forward, but wanted to start sharing the information sooner rather than later. So are there any questions anyone has?
Ryan, it's Brian from Norwich. I just want to clarify some numbers. On average, you've been talking at the meetings that at nighttime during fly quiet, it's about 100 operations, correct?
So yeah, so as we, in our technical committee meetings, we track flight quiet mode. And so that's when the air traffic is able to enter into flight quiet mode, where we're utilizing the preferential runways and departure procedures. And on average, the amount of operations that are occurring in flight quiet mode are around 100.
Is that 50-50 landings and takeoffs, roughly?
That's a good question. I don't believe it is that clean of a split. I believe we lean more towards arrivals than departures. I know in IFQ that was definitely the case. I don't have the exact percentage split right now, but I can follow up and provide that to you based on the latest data for flight quiet mode. But I do believe we lean a little bit more towards arrivals than departures.
Okay, so back into fly quiet, when the cross runways are used, what percentage of the 100 would be using them? Make sense, or?
I believe I'm following your question. And so ideally, in a perfect world, 100% of those operations would use the crosswind runways. Although, as we've noted, there are aircraft that may require a longer runway. For us to put a exact percentage on that, it's hard to say because it could vary from night to night. But ideally, all but those that absolutely need a longer runway would use a non-crosswind designated runway.
Yeah, so if I can jump in on that too, Brian, I think this is an area where we think that some outreach to the airlines will help us improve the number of flights using the crosswind runways. We know that everybody likes things to be like as convenient and easy as possible, but the airlines have historically been good partners with us on Fly Quiet. And so the plan would be to do a significant amount of outreach. The technical committee is working on a Fly Quiet report card that we'll be issuing at the end of each calendar year to really work collaboratively with the airlines to let them know how they can be better Fly Quiet partners with us. And I think using the crosswind runways as much as possible is certainly an area we intend to focus on.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Ryan, this is Russ from Schiller Park.
Mhm.
Until they accept the recommendations or make the FAA makes final plans, we can follow any kind of a rotation between now and then? Or what happens to the rotation program at all for all the towns around?
Sure. As of right now, the airport will operate under your current Flight Quiet program, which is the original Flight Quiet program, which does not incorporate a runway rotation. The FAA was willing to allow us to do some tests in order to see if rotation is feasible. And so those were the 3 tests we ran, as well as, our temporary interim flight quiet condition. And so at this point, it's going to be how the airport operates primarily today until we have a new approved flight quiet program.
Okay, thanks. Ryan, one more question, if you would. Do we have any idea whatsoever how long it'll take the FAA to come to a decision once they get it?
I hesitate to give any time frame there.
Okay.
I will say that it's probably longer than we all would like. Other than that, I can't put a specific time frame on it.
So Russ, we won't hold the FAA to this, but I think we are planning on probably 18 to 24 months.
Okay,
Just to
that's what I
set-
thought.
Yeah.
Here in a couple of years. I just want to know what we're going to be doing without a regular rotation plan. So when presidents start calling us, what's going on, we could tell them, well, we're doing this for until they decide, which could be a couple of years.
Yep.
And that's about what I was looking for. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? Do the Fly Quiet committee members have anything they want to add about the process?
Karen, looking way ahead, assume this gets approved by the FAA. Does the ONC or the Fly Quiet Committee anticipate that after 2 years after approval, that it may have to be looked at again for possible changes?
We're not really putting a timeline on it. I think our hope is that we're going to anticipate as much as possible, and that much like the 1997 Fly Quiet program, that this program will work for us for many years to come. But we are intending to continue with the monitoring of the Fly Quiet program. And I think that, we anticipate, there's going to need to be outreach to the FAA and air traffic control and the airlines to make sure that, our intentions are understood and that, we're collaborating with them. I don't know that we anticipate huge changes in that short of a timeline, but I think we'll remain open to see what our evaluations are telling us about how it's working and if we're meeting our goals and objectives.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I plan on talking about that a bit more tomorrow as well. Some language that we're going to include in your recommendation. And part of that would be to have, regular audits of the program, if you will, to kind of take a look and see how well the program is working, and if there are areas for improvement or revisions that all the stakeholders are willing to do, which I think there are things that possibly can be done within reason without triggering a whole new environmental review process. And so we do want to make sure that ability is baked in, if you will, to your program, to be able to make it a living program that's able to be a bit flexible and kind of change as needed over time.
Karen, I don't know if this is for you or for Ryan. When they look at the vectors, headings, everything else, will they consider looking at soundproofing for people that may not be as affected, are going to be affected more than not?
So that is one of our procedural topics that we're going to start discussion on tomorrow. I won't speak on behalf of the committee. I will tell you that it would be my preference as a member of the committee that we make a recommendation that the residential soundproofing program should be updated to reflect the new Fly Quiet program. So that's certainly a recommendation that the committee can make to both the CDA and the FAA. Ryan, do you want to weigh in on that a little bit more?
Yeah, as you mentioned, we'll we'll touch on that tomorrow as well. We do have to kind of, hold back and see what the FAA's findings will be. But if the FAA does find that, there needs to be some there are going to be noise impacts, and those noise impacts are required to be mitigated, we'll definitely be looking at sound insulation. But that's something we'll talk about further.
Won't that depend on the new noise contour that's going to be coming up here hopefully shortly?
Correct. So we do have a new noise contour coming out soon that is for the airport's terminal area plan, as well as the FAA's airspace changes. So that contour is going to have its own kind of mitigation requirements, but we're still waiting to hear from the FAA on what that is and what those might be. This process, once the committee and the CDA submit for FAA review, will most likely generate a new noise contour that will require its own potential mitigation if required by the FAA.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, not to confuse things even further, but we do potentially have multiple noise contours in the future here with O'Hare.
Sounds good.
Anybody else have any questions?
I think you and Ryan did a great job on this presentation. So thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate you asking good questions, you and Russ.
I have a
Oh, yep, Dennis?
Yeah, I might not be too understandable. I have COVID. I'm very sick, but
Oh, no.
well, I've been on this committee since the start, and thanks to you and Joe and Ryan and Jeffrey and everyone else involved on the committee, we had worked very, very hard at putting this together. We dissected every piece of evidence that we had. That's talking as a cop, as I was for many years, and looked at every possible ways of doing it. And this is really a great alternative, and I think it's a super program. So I just want to thank the committee for all that we did. I missed one meeting in all the meetings over the years we've been doing it, and I think the committee as a whole did a hell of a job. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. Feel better.
Thank you very much. I hope there's some way I can get tuned into the meeting tomorrow. So we'll see what we can do. Thank you.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, I'll echo, this was definitely a long haul effort for the committee to look at a lot of information. And so, it's been a number of years and a lot of deliberation, but we do feel pretty strongly that the alternative that we're going to put forward is the best one for a new Fly Quiet program. So I am not seeing any comments or questions from anyone else. So I will just reiterate that any of you can feel free to reach out to myself or Ryan or Maura. Certainly you can also reach out to Fly Quiet committee members who might be your neighbors to ask them specific questions about, their thought process, voting for this alternative. If there are, questions that come up a few weeks from now, please do ask. We're likely looking at an end of summer vote at the full ONCC. So we're going to continue our outreach efforts. We're going to be giving an update at the May 6th General Commission meeting. We're going to have another set of kind of open meetings in June as like a final touch base, but we're available at any time to answer specific questions that committee members might have. So if no one has anything else, I think we can give everyone some time back this afternoon, but I appreciate you all joining us. And hopefully we will see you all on the 6th.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
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 See everyone tomorrow.
Maura, did you keep a list of everyone who joined us? Oh, you're muted.
The ones I could tell who they were, I did.
Okay.
So we had Franklin Park, Schiller Park, Norridge, Harwood Heights, Elmwood Park, River Grove, and then I have to check the school districts. I know there were a couple school districts too. I just don't know those names as well
Yep,
off the top of my head.
Nope. That's fine. Okay, well, good. It was better attended than I
Yeah,
had hoped
yeah.
for. So
I sent reminders, so hopefully people will remember.
Good.
Did you see my note about the open house?
oh, the
Um,
one about the date not being available.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can do a different date.
I'm having Cafe La Cave check the other dates that you had open. I'm hoping you still have open just in case. And then I was gonna check Fountain Blue too. And then I wondered, should I check here
Yeah,
at CDA? Just to
yeah. I
see?
mean, if they've got maybe the bigger.
Yeah, the big one.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll
I think
try.
that's
I'll
fine.
try all those and see where we get.
that sounds good.
Okay, see you in a little bit. Thanks.
All right. Yep.
All right, bye.
Bye.